So, what do you do when an ex won't go away? It's a hard space to be in. And is it your battle? It's not your battle. However, it's affecting you and it's affecting the relationship.
Did you push record?
Thanks so much for tuning into our second act with Paige and Silka.
For your second act of life. Hey, Silka.
Hello, Paige. Paige, today I want to reply to a viewer who sent in, to me, was an interesting question. Uh, and it concerns something that a lot of us deal with starting over again, and that's dealing with exes. And at this point, at this point in our lives, there's a lot has amassed. It's long-term relationship, a lot of baggage is brought to the table. But he brings up a really interesting perspective. So let me just see what he says here. He goes, my question and my suggestion for a future show is, how do I deal with the reality of a person who desires and has intimate memories of a woman I plan to marry? Or more broadly, how do you deal with an ex who won't go away quietly? and I thought that's interesting because it isn't it is your problem, but not your battle. Let's talk about that.
So, what do you do when an ex won't go away? It's a hard space to be in. And is it your battle? It's not your battle. However, it's affecting you and it's affecting the relationship. So, ignoring it and not speaking up about it is not the right thing to do. Now, some people might disagree with me for that, but here's why I say that, Silka. If you are spending your energy and time with this person that you want to develop a committed relationship with, and it's really not the two of you that are in the relationship, it's three of you that are in the relationship because the ex won't go away. And it's been my experience that the ex doesn't go away because for whatever reason, there's a door that's still open. So if your significant other is still accepting emails, texts, Facebook messages, calls from this person, that's the problem right there. It's not so much that the ex won't go away. It's why is your significant other allowing or not putting boundaries down or bringing a third party into the relationship? So I'll just stop there before we move on and see what thoughts you have about that.
Well, and that it does make that makes a lot of sense, obviously. What comes up for me is, there are toxic exes.
Yeah.
At what point, and okay, so tech toxic also, there are a lot of things that you have to still deal with after a 30-year divorce, 20-year divorce, 10-year divorce, I mean, whatever, because if there's children involved, inheritance, whatever. So I don't see it that black and white, although what you're saying is, yeah, ideally that's what you'd want. Where do you draw the boundaries?
Well, what you brought up is a different situation.
Okay.
So, by the time you're our age and an ex won't go away, you have adult children. You don't have little children. So let's be clear about that. Your adult children are already going to make up their mind about what's going on in your life about who you're dating, right? And if the ex that won't go away is their father, well, you're right. There has to be a good line of communication, but that's not also black and white. More times than not, there is not communication and there's dissension between, the exes. Or your ex still wants to be with you and won't take no for an answer. That can border on stalking. And I actually have a couple clients like that right now because what I'm finding in this pandemic, I'm finding more of that happening than not. Because we're closed up, we're not able maybe to date as freely as we want, meet people as freely as we want, because there's, parameters down with the pandemic. So what happens? Your ex goes, all right, it's safer to go back to the person that I've already been involved with. And then for whatever reason, their anxiety kicks up and they need to see you more and they need to talk to you more. They need. Bottom line is it still comes back to your significant other deciding how much connection they want with the significant other if that works for you, the partner who's on the periphery. So there's a communication and a conversation that has to be had many times, possibly, as far as what are the boundaries? How do you feel safe having this ex come back? What works for you? What doesn't work for you? If your significant other does not want to hear what you have to say about the ex, that's a huge red flag because they're not listening and hearing how this situation affects you. What do you think is going to happen later on when something else comes in the picture about what affects you? So I'll take a pause there because there's a lot of different scenarios in this situation.
Yeah. Well, the scenario that this gentleman here is describing is it does, and of course it's his side only, but it borders lines on stalking. I think she's actually. I think he mentions that they were even going to get some sort of a restraining order or something. And what I'm hearing, though, also between the lines, and this is just strictly me, is that there's some insecurity on his end about why she is perhaps continuing. Like, as he said, that for me, it's a very unsettling feeling that I try to put out of my mind, but it's nonetheless a presence that is always there and always looming.
Well, think about it. As we get older, sometimes there can be more anxiety of us being alone, finding the right person for the rest of our life, having to start over again. And then in the back of our mind, wondering, okay, if this is an ex and my partner says this is done, but they're still engaging with this ex, that's an issue. If this ex becomes to the point of stalking, that's a different kind of issue if your partner is not engaging at all. See the difference with that? And if there's an ex that's stalking, that's when law enforcement has to be called. And that's when you have to get protection orders. So that's a whole different kind of thing that goes on. And I think that's a different show that we would talk about. Because more times than not, what I have seen is the ex is not stalking, but they're still in the picture and the significant other is still engaging. And then the person who's involved with the significant other is getting a sense of, oh my gosh, who's in this relationship? Is it two of us? Is it three of us? I'm getting nervous about this. So you have to check a couple things. If you're someone who's in a relationship and has to be involved with an ex coming back, first check with, what is your insecurity? Have there been flags that, yes, it's okay to have the insecurity, but if there really haven't been flags that that's not okay to have the insecurity, then what's been your background? What's been your baggage as far as your theme of it, your theme of insecurity and not trusting what's going on in the relationship? So there's all these different layers that go on. And like I've always said, Silka, you have to communicate with your significant other if there's an ex that's involved. There has to be clear communication. There has to be boundaries down for you as well, as far as what works for you, what can't work for you, and what your partner needs to work or not work with the ex. I know I've said a lot, but there's just so many different, layers and pieces to this type of a situation.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of layers, and a lot comes up for me in this as well. That would really be a tough situation. I would that would be a really tough situation to deal with. And I know where my insecurities come from. How would you close out the segment? What kind of advice can we give to people who are just struggling with this?
It is hard, and I completely understand and agree with you. When you have a potential third party that's in a relationship of two, you kind of think, am I allowed to say something? Am I not allowed to say something? Do I push too hard? Do I lose this relationship? Do I not push enough? Am I speaking up for myself? Should I be quiet right now? But the bottom line is, if there's something inside of you that's gnawing at you and saying something's not right with this, you have to speak up to your significant other and have a conversation of, look, I know you've had a history with this person, and you have to find out what the history was, how long it's gone on, whatever it might be. And a good question to ask would be, one, do you still have feelings for this person? Two, have things not concluded with this person? Three, is there something that needs to be finished that has not been finished? Four, are you afraid to let this person go for whatever reason? You really need to ask and find out where your significant other is with things. And if they get very well defended, defensive, angry, you've got your answer right there. Because when someone gets that angry, that well defended, there's something that they're holding on to, and it just might be the past with their ex. So you really have to pay attention to what can you tolerate in a loving way. What do you say, this doesn't work for me because there's three of us? So that the lines of communication need to be open. So I know I've said a lot, and again, this is so layered, and without knowing each person's layered situation and what themes and baggage that they bring, it's hard to be able to, hone in on it. But I think we've given a lot of suggestions and thoughts to think about.
No, I agree. I think also try to remember that you're the present, or that was the past. You're the present and the future. And yeah, I guess don't sabotage. There was one point made in an article I read that made sense. That the person, depending on how frustrated you get with this, find a way to vent also in a safe place versus constantly to your partner, because that can get very, you just get sick of that too. So I don't know, tough topic. I agree. So I hope we answered, you had some great suggestions, Paige. Thank you so much, and we will see you on our next segment of Our Second Act with Paige and Silka.
For your second act of life. Bye.
If you have questions or a particular idea about a topic that you'd like to hear us cover, please visit our website, secondact.tv. We have a little suggestion box in the upper right-hand corner of our site. Just click on that, send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.